Hello and welcome back to the board. I'm the Gaff Major, and this is my cover of my top picks for Season 23 ranked for participating in the No Pay to Win challenge. So the No Pay to Win challenge is basically using only tech tree ships, the tech tree commanders, I guess you say in game, using only tech tree commander inspirations. And so what we're trying to do is trying to see what we can do without any of the premium content that's in the game, whether that be ships for doubloons, global XP, previous campaign ships, rewards out of crates and things like that. Basically the stuff that you can grind in game, the stuff that's accessible to everyone. So when it comes to the ships, I'm going to be considering what the situation you're going to be in, and therefore what kind of benefits you can kind of bring to the table. So when it comes to the tier 5 battleships, assuming that matchmaking is about 50% mirrored, with it probably being 25% being matched against cruisers and 25% against destroyers, say, although the matchmaking doesn't seem to be quite like that, there's a big thing with the battleships at this tier, and that is the difference between having a 14-inch gun and smaller, or a 15-inch gun and larger. When it comes to the tech tree, there's only two ships which actually have 15-inch guns. There's the Bayern, which we can see on screen, and there's also the Queen Elizabeth. So I think my initial top pick is going to be the Bayern. The reason being is, first of all, the 1v1 ranked, most of the engagements happen at close quarters, I've noticed. So the Bayern, obviously, she has lots of secondaries, which is going to be advantageous when it comes to that close quarters engagement. And also when you get close, generally the dispersion doesn't seem to affect as much. So thankfully your 15-inch guns should be able to hit. Nice one about the Bayern is she does have standard fuse AP, so obviously that should be helpful. Now the reason why I'm focusing more on 15-inch guns is because when it comes up against battleships, as you can see with the Bayern, she has that 25 to 26mm plating on the bow and stern, which means those can only be overmatched by 15-inch armor-piercing shells. So being able to punch through the nose of an enemy battleship is obviously going to be advantageous. Furthermore, the Bayern has quite a reasonable armor scheme, which should help her maybe be slightly more survivable against enemy 15-inch or plus gun battleships, I guess you could say. The other reason why I'm focusing on 15-inch guns when it comes to the tech tree is because most of the good cruisers at this tier will have a main armoured belt capable of ricocheting 14-inch guns. So obviously having 15-inch guns means you can overmatch cruisers in their entirety almost. So with the Bayern, the reason why I picked her is obviously her front and nose plating. She's got an icebreaker, which does mean that there's not a lot of armour which a 15-inch gun can punch through. When it comes to working on 14-inch guns, you can see you're pretty much protected after the bow. When it comes to 16-inch guns, they're only going to be able to punch through the deck. So even things like the premium ships like the Mutsu and the West Virginia are going to have to try and work their angles against you. And the other nice one about the Bayern is obviously you do have that below water citadel, so should engagements get close, it should be hard for them to try and find your citadel. My other top pick, I think, would be the Normandy. The reason with the Normandy, I kind of feel like if you're going to be playing a ship with not 15-inch guns, then you probably want to focus on the ship which has a capable armor scheme in order to try and survive against ships with 15-inch guns or more. So one thing I noticed with the Normandy is she doesn't have a lot of exposed bow. She still has a partial icebreaker. She has a very large armoured belt, and also the armoured deck is capable of resisting 16-inch shells as well. And if you take the bow and the stern off, and we take that upper armour and the superstructure off, this is basically the part of your ship which is going to be resistant when angled against 15-inch shells. Furthermore, citadel nicely below the waterline, so it's going to be very hard to find when you end up in those close quarters engagement. And she also, although she's only got 340s, she still has 12 number of them. Honourable mention, I'm going to put the Queen Elizabeth in. Now the reason why I wouldn't say she's a dead pick is, first of all, her armour scheme isn't very resistant against 15-inch guns. She has a very large exposed bow, so 15 and 16-inch guns are going to be able to punch through that, and she's got a lot of exposed 25 and 26mm plating all along the top. The other downside of the Queen Elizabeth, I'd say, is that she has that British short fuse AP, which does mean that even if you do, say, overmatch a bow of a ship, those shells aren't going to go too far, so unfortunately you won't be getting any citadels. But I thought the Queen Elizabeth was an honourable mention because those 15-inch guns will be quite capable when it comes up against cruisers. Now, when it comes to the cruisers of the tier, the main things you want to be considering is what can you do against, say, 14-inch AP shells, because that's what the majority of battleships are equipped with, and also what you can do against 8-inch AP shells. So two features that you're probably going to be wanting to focus on will be having a bow, which is sufficient to ricochet 8-inch AP, and the main armoured belt capable of ricocheting 14-inch AP, or even better if you can. Now, the Trento has both of these capabilities, and so it does make the Trento quite a nice strong cruiser, especially when staying angled against, say, cruisers and with 8-inch guns, and even, say, the Graf Spee. If you stay angled enough, you should be doing alright, and even against battleships with 14-inch guns. The only downside probably would be when you come up against battleships with 16 and 15-inch guns, where you will be obviously taking damage. So in those situations, you'll probably be playing partially at range, hoping to burn them down, or chancing your arm and trying to close in and get those torpedoes on target. When it comes to looking at the citadel, it's obviously above the waterline, so you don't want to be offering any form of broadside, but it is quite a tanky amount of armour, so if you angle it and it does come in against that, you should be more than able to ricochet. Definitely a 14-inch shell. You might be chancing your arm at, say, something a bit more like a 16-inch shell, I guess you could say. Another good cruiser that is worth choosing is going to be the Aoba. So, like the Trento, she also has 8-inch guns, so that means you can obviously do quite well against, say, some of the very light cruisers at the tier, like Leander, the Bedonia, and the Gorky, which have a bow of only like up to 14mm plating. But it also means that you're going to be getting quite a nice bit of punch, and you should have quite a good fire DPM, I guess you could say, or HE DPM as well. So again, you've got a bow and stern capable of ricocheting 8-inch AP. You've got a main armoured belt capable of ricocheting the 14-inch AP. If you come up against 15-inch AP, then you're going to be chancing it a little bit, but it's going to be one of those things to work out. The only downside that I can really think of with the Aoba is those rearward facing torpedoes. You don't have great torpedo arcs up front, which does mean if you are closing in against a battleship to try and get that wonderful one-hit devastating strike with your torpedo launchers, it's going to be a bit risky, because you're going to have to be sailing in very close, and then you almost got to drive past them and launch them out from behind. From an honourable mention point of view, I think it's worth mentioning the Devonshire. She is probably also got one of the most reasonable armour schemes. The big downside is obviously that very large amount of very thin plating, I guess you could say, up the front there, which is only up to 16mm thick, which means it's only going to resist 8-inch AP. You take that away, and you can see that actually against a battleship you haven't got a lot of armour which you can really bounce shells off of, so it does mean you can take quite a considerable amount of damage up front and at the stern, and also when it comes to the citadel, it is above the waterline as well. The only advantage I can think of with Devonshire, she does come with repair parties, which does mean that she will obviously have a bit more longevity in the fight, and she does have those forward facing more torpedoes, I guess you say, that she can fire up front in comparison to, say, the Aoba, but then the Aoba does hit harder. So that'll be my free picks for a cruiser at ranked season 23. Now, when it comes to destroyers, I think there's probably three key things you want to take into consideration. Your probably gun, high explosive DPM. Most of the times you're going to be engaging against enemy destroyers, so the ability to put them down as quickly as possible is going to be pretty key. Furthermore, your overall HP. I think having some survivability, how long can you survive? You might be able to outlive the enemy player even if you do have a slightly less HE DPM. And furthermore, torpedo damage. You know that there's going to be, on the off chance you might end up in a game where you come up against a cruiser or against a battleship, and being able to dev strike them with your torpedoes is probably going to be one of the key ways of getting your victory over and done with as quickly as possible, or your defeat, you never know. So when it comes to the destroyers, DPM wise, the Mahan and the Gnevi obviously take the top two places, followed by the Gepard. However, it's worth mentioning that the Gepard does come with a 1x main battery reload booster, which basically halves a reload for a small duration, which is probably going to be quite nice. So first of all, you've got the third best DPM without this consumable, but you'd end up with basically the in the lead DPM when you actually activate this booster. Secondly, you've got the highest HP for the tier, so basically it's you're going to be most survivable. You're going to live the longest, and obviously, last but not least, you have the hardest hitting torpedoes at the tier. They do about 18,000 damage each, so it means if you can get them all on target, you won't have to worry about the target anymore. So I think the Gepard is in the lead. Next after that, I would probably say the Gnevi. The reason being is obviously she does have that second best HE DPM of the tier now, and also the torpedoes do hit quite hard. I think they do about 15,000 and a bit each, and they are quite fast. And generally, let's be honest, stealth torpedo range doesn't really matter in 1v1 ranked, because you're just going to be going for it. Running around the edges and not worrying about the cap is probably not going to be the way to win, and so therefore usually close run torpedo strikes on enemy ships or close quarters gun battles is going to be the way to go. Last but not least, I think there's the two hybrid choices that you could possibly do. The reason being is individually the ships aren't that amazing when it comes to their HE DPM, to their torpedo damage, or to their HP. The Guidey has obviously a great amount of HP, but her gun DPM is a bit average and her torpedo damage is pretty poor. The British have like an average torpedo damage and average DPM, but not the most amazing HP. But the reason why I'd highlight these two ships is because they both come with a set of consumables which could be quite advantageous. They both come with smoke and sonar. Now, the reason why I call these two out as advantageous, the reason being is on the Icarus, if you set it up with maybe a chain smoke commander, you've got 3 minutes of sonar, and if you can obviously set your smoke screen up in the central point where the two cap zones overlap, you'll be able to defend them both, possibly even cap them, but at least one of them. While staying in the comfort of your smoke screen, and if anything gets within 3.5 of you, you'll be able to light it up and shoot. Obviously, just bear in mind you want to try and keep the enemy outside of 2.5 but inside 3.5 during that engagement. However, that doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room. It gives you probably like the alpha lead on it, I guess you could say, but obviously you haven't got a lot of HP, so say you come up against something that is a bit mean like a Gepard or Gnevi or Mahan, if once they see you, it's going to be hard to break off. The Guidey has a slightly more advantageous position in regards to the range of her sonar. If we, I can't remember off the top of my head, but 4 kilometers range. So basically, if the enemy ship's within 4 but outside 2.6 or 2.5, you won't be spotted, but they will be. But in general, the ship has some questionable little traits, I guess you say. And also the smoke screen, you're not going to be able to chain smoke that smoke screen. So once you've used one of them, you will obviously no longer have smoke, and therefore your smoke and sonar trick is going to be over and done with. So you're going to have to obviously hope that whatever happens during that moment. So the reason why I've highlighted these two is just because I think they could be quite awkward thorns in the side of some people, but personally I think the Gepard and the Gnevi could be quite good choices for this. So that's my top 3 picks for each class for the Tier 5 Season 23 of 1v1 Ranked, and I hope you enjoyed them. Obviously, you may not completely agree, and it is all a matter of opinion, but what I've done is I've tried to pick the most suitable ship in each class, which should be alright enough to deal against members of its own class, but also have a little bit of dexterity should it come up against members of other classes of ships. Remembering that so far, from my experience of playing ranked, this 1v1, which obviously is a new format to the game, most engagements happen very close, most engagements happen within detectability range, and most engagements happen usually very quickly, unless things get a bit drawn out. But trying to just look at what the main categories are and some of the main things that happen at this tier. And at this tier, the things that really happen is cruisers start to become, a majority of them I should say, become capable of resisting 8-inch guns, AP. There's also the very few which are capable of actually angling against 14-inch guns, but also when it comes to the battleships, most of them can deal with 14-inch guns in regards to their armor scheme, but are equipped with 14-inch guns, apart from the very few which are equipped with 15-inch guns, which obviously does give them a slight advantage, but then they have disadvantages with those guns. This is why obviously having some of those pay-to-win ships may be slightly advantageous. I think the 3 pay-to-win ships I'd probably say of definite note would be definitely the Warspite and the T61. I think those two could be quite interesting. Anyway, so that's everything. I hope you have enjoyed it. Until next time, I'm the Gav Major, and back to the port.
Hey, hey, clear the way. Here comes the galloping major. Bumpity, 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 bump. Get out of the way there, you fellas.